And now, the lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Lowe.
To the lowdown this Saturday night. I'm your host, Elson Lowe. Saturday on a high with the lowdown. Thank you for tuning in. Folks, if you could share the link, we would appreciate that. You know, we want to get as many show as possible, so be sure to share that link. Let's get it, get the message out there. Let's get, different people together. An opportunity with us. You know, we always try to keep it low down. And as a result, you know, we try to get us through difficult times. And tonight's show is actually going to be about some very difficult because, we've got a real spike, a real jump in the cost of living in Guyana, as in, many countries. And it's something that's very a bit of that. We're going to give you a sense of what's been going on. We're going to have, the odd joke about the cost of living, but we'll also give you a sense of some of the things that the PNCR has proposed that might be solutions, for the short and for the longer term for these cost of living woes. We hope to really educate you viewers and give you a sense of the direction that the country could be going. This evening, we'll start off chatting about minimum livable income and those sorts of things. We're going to have as our guest, barring any technical difficulties, we're going to have as our guest of the PNCR, Miss Elizabeth Williams. And we're going to close off this show, continuing the discussion that we've been having about working in the oil and gas industry in particular, and talking a bit about U.S. firms and the various U.S. and local firms, and how you, as a young Guyanese, can adapt yourself to this different job environment. So one is I remind those of you watching is to share the link. Share the link. Let's get the word out as broadly as we can. Let's get everyone in so that we can. One of the things that I recall from my high school days is that we would often cry, and that I think is again so spot on for what is going on right now. In fact, one of the funniest things that someone say, quite loudly, with the chest out, as we say in Guyana, the nice at all. And, I think we have to echo that sentiment. Things is not nice at all, because as we carry through some of the charts, giving you a sense of how things have changed in terms of cost of living, in terms of the cost, especially of food items, largely because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also the war in Ukraine. How bad it is, and how difficult it must be for all of us here in Guyana, but in particular those who may not have the most the scale. So that is something that is concerning. I think is every Guyanese should be concerned about, and we'll look at the national budget and how of anything that really will help, to the point that it's quite comical. And we love to have a laugh here. We love about things and policies and the national budget as opposed to people. But as a result, we often come across very funny national budget this year, which is the biggest budget the country's ever seen by some distance, represents one of the funniest things that I think you'll see around. All of that, it's going to be great. Folks, share the link, share the link. Let's try and get some everyone to see an opportunity to see the show. Share the link tonight about the cost of living, about why some of this is, and about some measures that have been put forward by the PNCR that hopefully will really help citizens, and we believe over the longer term will have a substantially better impact, a good impact, development of the country, and are very necessary. So we'll chat about all of those things. As a result, we're gonna lean into some of our comedies. So if we could get our first them up, we've got one or two doozies right now. So the first meme, if we can get that out. Ah, there we go. So someone is saying because gas prices are they're rocking their Corolla, they're living that Corolla life, which I think is very understandable given the circumstances. And we've seen gas prices as high as I think it's 2008, so it's pretty alarming. Let's get the next one. So here again, this is a post from a thread that often. Oh, actually, we're still talking about the a different issue. This is a post that someone made about like a shack, but apparently this is a house that's worth some pretty substantial numbers here. People are saying that housing prices in Ghana have gotten so ridiculous that argue that it is a beachfront property. I guess you could argue that it is a beachfront property. $800 million, though, is perhaps a bit too much to be asking for a shack. Because housing prices have gotten so high in Guyana, it's become almost a parody. It's become a joke because ordinary Guyanese can't realistically afford housing in the city where they would normally have been living, and really around the Georgetown area, in large part due to the changes brought about in the economy from the oil and gas workers that want to live in these sorts of prime locations. So this prime location is it's a pristine beachside location. You got a nice, but it's $800 million. Can we get the next slide up? Great. So we've now got a comment from someone saying that times are, as a man you don't need much, but at this rate he can't even afford a side woman. So he's gotta he's gotta let her go and get himself his own. How bad things have gotten in the country in that regard. Let's get the next photo because obviously cost of living is really through the roof. So we'll move on from the memes of the week, and we'll talk a bit about why people are complaining so much about the cost of living. So now we've got that is very alarming, I think, of the oil price, the crude oil price. If you look at from the start of 2022. So now you'll see that there is an absolutely titanic, monstrous, gargantuan spike in prices when we went up all the way. It's not reflected there, but the high was $139 a barrel. That was over a weekend. And this all happened around, I believe it's March 10th. So we saw a really massive spike. You then saw a drop and then another spike. That drop is important, though. We'll get into that particular drop. But that is an incredibly high spike in the price of oil. And obviously that's made it so difficult for consumers that people seem to be giving up their car for a cow. If we can get the next slide. So we've now got what the prices were at the pump around March 10th, which is where we saw that cent increase in the price that was charged at the pump. So a really massive increase in the price, a very substantial one. the graph that we showed you just a moment ago, you'll observe that there was a substantial drop off. As much as there was a sharp rise, now, given that there was a sharp drop off, you would have expected to see prices drop off sharply as well, prices at the pump. We even saw that drop off so sharp the prices went down to under $100 a barrel. Under $100 a barrel. So that's a really big change. But did we see prices on the market ever return to the level that they were at before we had that big sharp spike? Did we see that at all? That's really concerning. What it means is that consumers are not getting the benefits from a lower price. They're only paying the costs from a higher price. So if the price goes up, it stays up. That's very from government ministers and so on, that the Ghana Energy Agency is supposed to be monitoring these types of things to ensure that we get the best. I look forward to seeing what the Ghana Energy Agency will do in respect to this, but it's pretty worrisome. And if we can get the next picture up, that'll help viewers to understand, why it's a bit worrisome. So we're hearing again that some gas stations, this has got a reduction in the fuel tax from 10% to 0%. So there was an expectation that that would reduce the cost of fuel. That would be a nice, we'd be at a more comfortable price. To date, it seems that Guy Oil has reduced their prices, but it's unclear about the other gas stations. And the reporters went around and asked the question of various gas stations as to whether they'd be dropping their prices. And, one of the reports that you get is that, it's not the right time, they're not ready for that, but also that there's no obligation to drop your prices. Isn't that a strange thing to hear? Them less to actually sell the gasoline that's available. But they're not lowering the prices because they think that they're not obligated to do that. That's an interesting something for the Ghana Energy Agency to really take a look at. Because, of course, we want to ensure that any kind of cost of living, the benefits are passed on to consumers rather than residing in specific companies who get all of the financial, though the cost of gasoline is lower on their end. So that is really concerning. And it's something that, is unfortunately board. Before we jump into our next group of similarly troubling charts, I'll tell you a quick story from my own experience. So I have a particular wing spot that I go to because the wings are a little cheap. It's a good amount of wings, relatively cheap, tasty. Head on over there. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna get myself a beer. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna hang out. I get my wings, and these wings are usually $1,500. Waitress arrived. She said the wings are now $2,000. So you should have seen my face because I was so taken aback because it's such a big change in the price. But with the price of chicken, which is that the price of chicken is through the roof again. So across the board, we're seeing all of these ridiculous prices. I mean, my face, I was so shocked. It's through the roof. And this is really making it difficult for everyone in Guyana. I mean, much less me with my humble plate of wings. But, and that is something that so many Guyanese are suffering from. Higher cost of living. So many Guyanese are suffering from that. And it's something that, we'll discuss because it seems to me that that is wholly inaccurate. And as the allocation for dealing with cost of living is wholly inadequate. So this was all developed. This budget was all developed before the war in Ukraine. So is very much out of date and doesn't really address the sharp changes that we've seen. And we'll go into that for a bit to give you a sense of why it's so concerning. If we could get the next picture up, and we'll delve right into this. Again, you have to laugh so that you don't cry, viewers. That's what we want to remind you. You have to laugh so that you don't cry. You'll observe that to the far end of your screen there, around the 2022 mark, you're seeing a really sharp spike up, almost a vertical spike up, right? That's up to the 2022 side of the graph. You'll see a spike up. This is a graph of wheat prices. Wheat, we get our flour, we make our tennis roll, and so on. That spike up is almost vertical. That's how fast the price of flour has gone up. With Namilco saying that they've seen in, I think it was a 2 or 3 week period, prices go up 40%. 40% for increase their price by about 15%. We've seen a call by the AFC for flour to be fully subsidized. We've seen the PNCR issue a statement that's been set aside for the national budget, cost of living mitigation measures that should focus on things like flour and so on. So there is a call from the opposition for the government to target these types of areas where you're seeing such a shocking and huge increase in the cost of goods. Now, this is because Ukraine and Russia really are wheat producing areas, and if you can't plant wheat because of an armed conflict, it's very understandable that there'd be a huge run up in the price because there isn't going to be as much wheat available as there might have been in the past, unfortunately. Of course, that's a really grave people of Ukraine the best. Also, the people of Russia who, of course, would not have instigated this war themselves. That's down to the Russian administration. But we, of course, looking at effects back here in Guyana, seeing the effects on a huge scale because of such sharp rises in the price. Very concerning. We'll see some more of this, how these things have been affected. If you look now at, and this is just before the crisis in Ukraine, you'll see that the price of grains and also the price of cooking oil from 2020, onward throughout the pandemic, those prices have gone roof. They're much, much, much higher. Folks, again, we have to laugh so that we don't cry because, are we looking at skyscrapers, those prices? And so for ordinary citizens, you can only imagine the incredible pain that they've been facing throughout this pandemic without having as many jobs available, while seeing go through the roof, right through the roof. It's a skyscraper there. It's incredibly concerning. But have we seen the government respond to actually take the type of robust measures that they should take, or have we seen them come up short? I'll remind viewers, firstly, that there was one COVID-19 cash grant, which was $25,000. The pandemic, as far as memory serves, so that would mean that one $25,000 was supposed to last us for the entire 2-year period. Wow, that $25,000 is stretching very, very far. I don't know how in the world that was ever intended to be enough. Let's look at the next photo so we can get a sense of how in other countries where we've seen more robust measures to combat the pandemic, more robust financial incentives, where we've seen support is something that's been talked about, especially those that are most affected by the pandemic. We've actually seen really good. We've seen employment numbers return to 2019 pre-pandemic levels. We've seen so many countries pull themselves out of the pandemic in a better phase than they were before. And so, in fact, what you're seeing is that in the US, the jobless claims, the number of people who are making claims for the government for support job is reduced to the lowest level since 1969. So that means that the economy is performing quite well in the US, that as much as prices may got, things are going quite well, and you're seeing people be employed, and you're seeing people from that perspective be able to cope with these really high prices. So that is something that should give you a certain degree of optimism, something that should help you to feel more optimistic. But is that what we've seen in Guyana? Is in things get better than they were before the pandemic? Well, I'll tell you something quite specific, actually. We had a jobless rate in Guyana of 13.9%, just about 14% there, before the pandemic began. That was our job. Good, right? Well, not good, but that's what the rate was. The rate now is 15.5%. So the rate after, at this point in the pandemic for us, it's higher than it was during the period just before the pandemic. So we have not been able to recover. We have not been able to recover or surpass by the levels of employment that we were at, the percentage of employment that we were at prior to the pandemic. We've not been able to recover as a country, but rather faced with higher levels of unemployment, higher levels of youth unemployment as well than we would have had before the pandemic. But other countries have, in large part because they had much more supportive programs. They help people to deal with the cost of living. They help people to deal with the pressures of the pandemic, whereas the government did not do that in any shape or form and continues to do that in a wholly inadequate way. Let's get the next picture up so we can give viewers a sense of this. So we've got oil money coming in. We've got oil money coming in, but the salaries to compensate people have not been improved. We saw only a 7% increase for public servants when the inflation rate was almost 6%. So that's a negligible, almost no increase. We haven't seen robust measures that have been effective at bringing down the inflation rate. We've seen inflation across the world continue to spiral. We actually saw inflation, food inflation, through last year reach as high as 14, almost 15%. So huge numbers. And if you think about the skyscrapers that we were looking at earlier, you can understand why inflation was so high, food price. And as much as the government is making money from oil, we've not seen them effectively combat inflation in Guyana by any means. They've struggled really to combat inflation. They've struggled to help people to keep up with the cost of living. We've even seen things as interesting as fish, the cost of fish doubling locally. And so again, government has not been able to keep a handle on this. But one of the things that you must perhaps ask is, why is it that the government is struggling so much to get a handle on inflation? Is this all just international factors? As an oil-producing country, benefiting from high oil prices, making substantial amounts of money, or address these things? Can you imagine if we were in a country that didn't produce oil? If we were, in the pre-finding oil Guyana, where we would have been just having to face tremendous pressure. Why are we in a situation where it feels like we're not producing oil? It feels like we're not benefiting, are benefiting massively. The GDP forecasts for this country, were built off of, this is by international organization, IMF, about $74 price generally thought of for the oil price over the course of the year. That's just under a 50% growth rate. But if we're looking at prices around 120, if we're looking at these enormous prices, these high increases, essential increases, then that means that the country is going to be growing at a far faster rate, and the government will be getting far more oil revenues. Might have gotten $74 million of revenue from one thing. They would now get $120 million of revenue, USD, of course, an oil lift from one of the oil lifts that we market. And so every time that the government is able to get some of the oil, they're able to sell it at a ridiculously high because we're seeing a crisis. So we're seeing a lot of these benefits concentrated there. We're seeing the government raking huge amounts. Does that mean that the government is putting aside money citizens through these difficult times? Is that walking hand in hand, or are we seeing a complete perhaps misunderstanding of what really is necessary in such an unusual circumstance? Country is doing well, but the ordinary person is really punishing. So let's take a look at the next picture, the one of the killers of the evening. So we've got a nice pie chart here, and that pie chart has the national budget, the budget for 2022. You've got your nice reddish pinkish there. That's the broader national budget. Then you've got your little purple. That's the share that has been put aside to assist with cost of living mitigation measures. So that's the $5 billion. So when you look at that, you basically can't even see the amount that's been put aside for cost of living mitigation measures to help with cost of living. It's almost as if it's not there. In a budget of $552 billion dollars, five put aside for cost of living mitigation measures. Really? That is, we're looking at 0.9% of the national budget that's been put towards cost of living measures. 0.9%, not even a percent, not even a percent that's been put aside for cost of living mitigation. Now, I want you viewers to throw your mind back for a second. You saw us that we were looking at for things like cooking oil, things like wheat, things like gasoline, skyscrapers. You saw that? And the government only put aside, that's why it actually, they only put aside this small sliver, $5 billion, 0.9%. Well, they could give you a 2% or a 3% or a 4%. Gave us 0.9% to deal with cost of living mitigation. And now, you must keep in mind again, viewers, this is before the conflict, before everything got way out of control. So I now must ask the question whether this $5 billion is going to be all that's put aside to deal with this severe situation. This is a serious proposal by the government. They're actually going to keep $5 billion as all of the money that's available. I think that they need to take another look at their numbers because unbelievably inappropriate to the point of being comedic. Oh, like, whose idea was this? $5 billion alone? And just to give you view context of this, a little bit of context. So the government is spending on a lot of bridges and is spending on a lot of roads and is spending, and of course, many of those are really important and supposing that they're managed well, because we have a problem with managing infrastructure projects well in this country, really progress. We'd like to see some, those things come to fruition. But the government has put $218 billion, $218 billion investments versus $5 billion towards cost of living. That means that they're spending 4 to 4 times as much on bridges and roads and so on than they are on cost of living, when we're looking at some skyscrapers in terms of the increase in price. And this, citizens, this explains why everything seems to be costing so much more. Wages are not growing. Government seems to be unable to do anything about it because they have not put anywhere near the amount of money that they need to put towards it to actually deal with the problem. What they've done is it and gone in their own direction. And I'll say something that I think is interesting, and I think Annie should think about. We often hear that people are caught in 1970s thinking. My belief that the government is caught in 1990s thinking, which is when I think a lot of them might have been more prominent in their studies and so on. And I think that they're totally on solutions, the modern ways to look at these problems. And as a result, their policy making is all over the place, and they don't know, and the government doesn't know what it's doing. It's again pretty hilarious. This 5 billion, this 0.9% remains what the government intends to use throughout, because that would be uh, very unfortunate for the average Guyanese. But as I said in the beginning, we gotta laugh so that we don't cry, folks. We gotta laugh so that we don't cry. This is truly unbelievable. So we understand the problem. The problem is resources have not been allocated in order to deal with the cost of living the way that they should have been allocated. Nowhere near allocated. And we're at the same time faced with a country that is growing at a tremendously quick rate. It's growing so much. It's doing so well. And so as a result, we've got a really difficult and an interesting problem to deal with, where the government has really not put aside what the flip side. Let's ask ourselves, what are some of the solutions to this? How can we deal with this? The first thing that's important to understand is that with oil economy, is that the structure of the economy, because the gains are concentrated in the government, in the state, in the government coffers, and the cost, inflation, high oil prices, and so on and so forth, you will see that the government kind of has to play a bigger role in terms of distributing these benefits. Now that can take many forms, whether it's a cash grant, whether it's a subsidy, whether it's direct provision of goods, and that is something that of course, will come out in the course of national debate on these issues. Of course, we in PNCR have long-term solutions as well as short-term solutions that will help to answer this problem and help people to really understand how this should work. And the framework called the minimum livable income. And so what we're saying is we want to see a minimum level at which people can get an income where they can live comfortably, where we can have a reasonable standard of living for everyone, because of course every citizen has a right to some of the benefits of their country, and if one of the benefits of our country is a lot of our revenue coming in, which goes directly to the government, then citizens should benefit in one way or another, we own, which is the resources of the country. We should all benefit. Now, we've got a range of policies that are connected to the minimum livable income. However, what I would say is I want to talk a bit about one particular area, and that is the salary top-up. So we're going to go into the sense of how that works, why that's so important, and what essentially it even means to get a salary top. Essentially, what this is a negative income tax. That's the technical term, but what it just means is if you make below a certain level, additional funds to ensure that you're earning at a certain level, to ensure that your earnings meet what we think a reasonable standard of living should be. You would get a top up on top of your salary. So let's say you're making 70,000, you might get 20,000 on top of that, or you might get 30,000 on top of that. It will vary, of course, based on where you're more expensive to live in Georgetown than it might be in Port Beast, and of course that will vary. So that is what a salary top up is. It means benefit from getting an additional something to help to the level across the economy that we want to see so that all citizens are able to have a good standard of programs. We can structure how we get them budgeted, but they are meant really to distribute the benefits that are concentrated in the government. Now, at the same time, we will emphasize in the PNCR training programs, and we've already started talking about some of these programs to help the lot of citizens who did not finish high school to get a chance to get CXC passes, whether it's in math or English or other types of skill training, so that they can benefit from this. One thing that it is important to consider, viewers, is that about 17,000 children but only 10,000, give or take, will write CXC. So what happened to the 7,000 children that may have dropped out of high school? And this has been happening for years and years and years. So if we take the 23 years that the PPP was in government, you're talking about 7 multiplied by 23. So you really quick, viewers. Let's put in 7,000 children every year times 23 years. That's 161 people that don't necessarily have access to the programs we want to see. So this is something that we're going to talk a bit more about in the PNCR. It's something you're going to hear a lot about, and it's something that we're going to address because it is whole that many people to not have access to these opportunities. But that's what's going to accompany, on one hand, these types of salary top up. So that as much as we want to help you to help you to keep pace with the economy, to help you to continue to improve, we are also going to be looking at training so that you can benefit from these higher paying jobs. So it's both strategies so that we're distributing the benefits, but also helping you to be able to earn those benefits for yourself for the foreseeable future. I believe that we have our guest online now, and soon we'll have a nice light chat. This is Miss Elizabeth Williams. She's the vice chairman of the PNCR. So we're going to have a quick chat with her. Miss Williams, are you there?
Good evening.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear, Elson.
Hi. Good, good. I'm glad to have you on. It's a good of us who know you and me personally will know that we go way back. Miss Williams actually was a teacher of mine all the way back in high school. So it's me up here, and we have lots of fond memories from a long time ago. So how are you tonight, Miss Williams? You're good.
I am extremely good, but extremely tired. Having a long day and even a couple of long days in preparation for our general council, which began today. And so I must apologize even for
Sure.
coming on a bit late, Elson, because I was so tired. I came home, had a bath, and I just jumped into the bed. And my phone just came on. So after it was down for a little while. And then I saw the message that you sent
It's
me.
okay. Thank you for giving us some of your time. We really appreciate it. So one of the things we wanted to chat about, and as I always say, we keep it light on this show. What are some of your favorite things about Guyana? If you could give us one or two of your favorite things about Guyana. What do you really like
All
about our
right.
country?
Let me just say I'm
What are
happy
some of
that
the things about Guyana?
yeah, I'm happy that you started off with that question, Elson. I think we have the most beautiful country in the entire Caribbean, the entire world. But the people, we are loving people. We are the most hospitable. And the fact that you can come to a Guyanese house, no matter how poor that person is, and as long as they have food, you will always get something to eat. So I think the fact that my favorite part is of being a Guyanese or about my country is the hospitality of our people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Guyanese are very friendly people. That's something that's been said a lot. Our viewers are clear. There are many countries where people are not very friendly. There are countries where people tend not to be as outgoing and open to chatting, to being hospitable. So we've got to really appreciate the fact that we're such a friendly and in that regard, happy-go-lucky people, I guess you could say.
Yes, we are.
So
Um,
that's for that, Miss Williams. That's great. Yeah, sure. The next thing that we like to do this show is we like to do a quick fire round, where I'll give you a couple of options and you pick one or the other, and that's always something which is quite fun. And everyone, of course, will pick their own variety of options, and that will hopefully give viewers a little bit insight into what it is that you like. So we're just gonna fire them off, and you say that. So the first one, I think it's a difficult one, but so do you like sorrel or do you prefer mobby?
mm, that is a difficult one indeed.
Tough, eh?
That is a difficult one because to say I like sorrow against
Yeah,
Marby, I don't know how I'm going to answer that. But
yeah,
I
tough, right?
it's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
tough. I love both of them, but I probably, if I really, 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 really had to make a choice, I would say Mobby.
All right, there we go. Winner from Mobby. All right, another one is seawall or creek.
See, but the creek. That's a no brainer. The creek, definitely.
Sounds like you almost said seawall there.
Nah,
Are you
nah. The
sure? You
seawall
sure?
is not. Nah, the seawall is nice and they have the breeze and whatever. But to me, too many people, right? But a creek, oh Lord, I can go into the water and just lie right there and just.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm. You're talking about that, and I'm just imagining me going there
yeah, yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah. That sounds good. One of the things I like to say is that if you're not from Guyana, you would say that we have no beaches. But if you're from Guyana, you know that the creek is our beach.
It is. It
That's
is.
our version. It's a nice local thing. Yeah. All right. Black cake or sponge cake? Right? Do you like something heavier or something more savory, something sweeter? Black cake or sponge cake?
Sponge cake.
Sponge cake. Nice, nice. Giant otter or giant anteater? Tough one. You got the giant otter. You got the giant anteater. Both these things that we've
I
heard
would
about
choose
for
it.
so many
I
years.
would choose the anteater.
Okay.
The anteater.
Okay, okay, good, good. Yeah, I would have chosen the giant otter, but of course, everyone has their own preference. And then this one is more of a fashion choice. Would you prefer a dress or a pantsuit?
Dress.
Nice. So again, we're trying to keep things light. You know, it's fun to answer these types of questions. And we're gonna move on from the quick fire round for that. That was quite fun. And I'll ask you another interesting question. What do you enjoy the most about being the PNCR? Something that you really like about the job that really makes your day, that is rewarding about being the PNCR vice chairperson? You know, what do you enjoy the most about being the party vice chairperson, at least so far?
Um, I tell you what, Elson and audience, being the party's vice chair, trust me, it's been an adventure so far, but an adventure that entails a lot of work. And meeting the people, listening to their needs, having a deeper insight as to what and
Sure.
as to what you want to do for the development of the country. Because when you meet the people, you kind of like, you know what? I'm gonna hear this particular issue. I'm gonna hear because you sometimes can believe you know what their issues are, right? But I
Sure.
from being the vice chair of this party and moving around up and down, inside and out, I have had the privilege of going to some places, listening to some people, having calls, you know, and reaching
Yeah.
out, and more so walking, doing what I was elected to do, being on the ground and
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
making sure that the needs of our people are met one way or the other. So it's really really
Great.
nice.
That's
It's a
great.
lot of work. I
Yeah.
can tell you this, Elson. You don't have a day. You don't have a
Okay.
day off. You don't have a day. It's there's no Sunday and say, well, okay, I am
Yeah.
shutting down and I am not going to do anything, because sometimes you might say, all right, I'm not coming out of the house today. I'm not going on a walkabout. I'm not going on this. But then you have a phone call, and then somebody says, we need you here, and I have to jump into my car no matter how tired I am. But service, I love what I do. Service to the people. And it's
Yeah.
just inspiring me every day to be a great leader. You just don't, and when you see that else when you see that I can't meet the needs of our people, it really really hurts me. I wouldn't lie.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely understand that, and it's heartwarming to hear that we've got a vice chair about the ordinary citizen, and really makes the time, takes the extra effort to reach out to people on the ground to get their opinions, to get their thoughts, to make sure that people's voices are being heard. That's something that I think is important. That's something that people have been calling for. And that's something that I think will give us all some hope going forward. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that, Miss Williams. That's all we've got for now. So thank you very much for giving us some of your time, and it was good to see you.
I actually thought it was been more long. Oh, Elson, I want to say,
Well, we'll be sure to bring you back.
yeah, I want to say my final words. I want to say thank you for the viewing audience. Thank you so much, Elson, for having me. Tonight I am a bit tired, extremely tired, but I want the people to know, and I want people to learn to start sharing these programs. Is that the PNC is the best and the only hope for Guyana, and we are on the verge, on the hill to cross over to victory. And I want people to have faith. I want people also to go out there, get registered, get their children out, their 14 years, and those who was registered in 2018, go 2018, 2019, go out there, get registered, because you can only
Yeah,
make a difference, be the change you want to see in this world, put the leaders that you want to see in office to sit in the
absolutely.
seat of government if you are registered and you are
Yeah,
able to vote. Elson, I want to appeal to our comrades out there, and I want to let them know, right? It may seems a bit dark in your end of the wood, but as our party battle song says, hold the line of battle, comrades. Hold that line of battle, and we will prevail. Do what you have to do. Get
yeah,
up, get out, get your friends, get your family, get your loved ones out. Go out there and get registered, right? And make sure you do what is right and allow
yeah.
God to do the rest.
That's so important.
Yes. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. And as we were discussing, the the difficulty and salaries not going up to match that. I think that so many people on the ground are under a lot of pressure. And so again, to hear you speak about how much you want to help, I think really gives us hope for the direction that we're going to take the country moving forward. So thanks so much, Ms. Williams. This was really fun having you on, and we're definitely time. All right, so again, that was Ms. Elizabeth Williams, who is the vice chair. That was a nice quick chat, and we were able, hopefully, to get to know her a little bit more as a person. And she, is someone I've known for a long time. It's really, I think, a happy soul that wants to really serve her country best as she can. So it's good that we've, continued to roll on. We just have a few tips for you. Remember, we always try to end off these programs chatting a bit about how young people can look at the changes and look at getting jobs in the oil and gas industry. Different companies, often U.S. companies or Trinidadian companies that might have a different corporate culture, different company culture. Someone mentioned to young people out there looking to get a job in this environment is when you're working at one of these companies, there's things that are pretty important. On one, that much on in Guyana, but we really would have to in a corporate environment is communication channels and things like emails. Of course, with the way that they want to communicate, whether that's WhatsApp, whether that's going to be via an instant messenger. But emails often are very important, and you can't really for an email. They're considered to be work items in the corporate environment, in the company environment, when you have higher paying jobs that are very high stress and have to check your email regularly, and you have to ensure that they're always addressed in a timely manner. That's something that we have to be much more aware of in Guyana, because they really check their email every day or use their email a whole lot. So that's something that's really vital. Another thing that's important to note in the vein of communication called escalation. Escalation essentially means that when you have an issue or a problem with carrying out your daily duties, you should reach out to whoever it is that is there to support you, to receive some, first of all, to let them know that there's a problem, but second of all, to see whether it is possible for you to receive some support. So letting your manager and so on know before a problem becomes not fixable. So as soon as possible, that's a pretty critical element of corporate culture, in at least from my experience, but I imagine in many other jurisdictions. So that's a word that you want to keep an eye on. Another principle that is one that comes up a lot is that of collective. So when something goes wrong, it's everyone's fault that it went wrong, not just one person's fault. And so everyone is responsible for keeping an eye on things to make sure that everyone kind of has to chip in order to get things to go right. It is also important from that perspective, where you're working along as a team and to build professional relationships. Now, what do I mean when I say build professional relationships? When you're working along with people, that's a professional relationship. But it is possible so that when you have disputes or when times are a bit difficult, you have a good relationship with the people that you're working with, so that it's difficult times. So it's a good thing to try and get lunch with the people that you're working with, or to try and get coffee or ice cream, I guess, if that's what you prefer that you're working with, so that you can give them a sense of who you are and get a sense of who they are. And from that perspective, you'll be able really to work along with them in a little bit more easily. And that is something that I think we as a country need to keep in mind as we get into to this new sort of climate, new higher earning climate, building relationships is very important and will help the success of any young people in a particular area in the oil and gas industry. From that perspective, I think the last thing that I'd like to share is that you have to look at when these disputes, unfortunately, as they always will happen, you'll always have some sort of a dispute. When they do pop up, it's important to kind of have a sense of, but making sure that your direct manager, the person directly above you, is aware that there's a problem before going to someone who's on a higher level. It's always good and clear communication. That is something that is valued in the professional world quite a lot, and something that I think young Guyanese should keep in mind. One who should be aware of something is aware, so that they don't find out in circumstances when it might not be the best, and certainly might not be work out the best for the company, might cause conflict. So those are some quick professional tips. I obviously have worked at I don't know how many viewers would know this, but I've worked at Goldman's professional environments that you'll really see. And so a lot of these little bits of advice are things that I picked up over the years that have proven to be quite useful. So I just want to young people that might be looking to get into the professional environment as we wrap up tonight's program. So we've come to the end of another program. It's a Saturday night, and it with me here on the Lowdown, starting your Saturday night on a high with Elson Low. And we look forward to seeing you next week. We're going to have another great chat. Again, thanks for being here.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.